Here we go. Okay, so this is July 4, year 2013, and I'm talking with Sylvia Sushman. This is the first of a series of videos that we're going to be making where Sylvia is talking about her life and times. So, Sylvia, did you want to, let's start and tell me what you know about, let's talk about your grandparents first.
My grandparents?
If you remember them. And so let's start with your mother's parents. Did you know your mother's parents?
I never really knew my grandfather, her father.
Mm-hmm.
He was a wine dealer. He used to work in a wine cellar in Russia. And
Do you remember his name?
one of my kids is named after him. I can't remember which one.
Okay.
I could have gotten this information.
So he was a wine dealer in Russia. And did he come to this country, or did he stay in Russia?
Did he ever what?
Did he come to this country?
No, he never did. But my grandmother did.
Where in Russia were they living?
They used to live outside of Kiev. Kiev Gubernia, which means a village of Kiev,
Mm-hmm.
which is close by, apparently. I did.
And he was a Rosen?
He was a what?
A Rosen? That was his last name? No, his last name was,
Wait a minute.
that would be your father. His last name would have been,
I'm trying to think what his last name was.
okay.
It was my mother's father. Oh, it was Lafayette. The Russian word was Lafatinsky. It became Lafayette when they got to the States. And I didn't know, oh, they also had a tea room, a wine cellar and a tea room. And they would keep it open on Sundays and weekdays and entertain Russian soldiers and whoever else wanted to come. And that's about all I know.
When did your grandmother come to this country?
When my mother did, she came with them.
Was your grandfather still alive?
No. But they said he became ill or go down into the wine cellar, which is very hot, steamy apparently. I'm not sure why it should be that warm. Then came out into the cold air, and apparently that did something to him. He got pneumonia, some other ailment. So he never got to this country.
Do you remember your mother's name, and do you have memories of her?
Yeah, what was her? Trying to think what her name was. Fanny? No. Who would know? Harold.
Okay.
Harold has all the memories.
We'll have to ask Harold.
Harold.
But what did you used to call her? Did you used to call her, did you have a name for her? Bubba.
Bubba.
And
The Yiddish I learned from her. A small amount that I picked up. But she never learned English. She never delved to the outside world. She would go to, I would help her. Different holidays, I would accompany her to shul because she didn't know her way of passage or whatever you want to call it.
and how old were you when she died?
I was like 13.
Okay. Did she ever? Could you have conversations with her, or just you knew just a little enough Yiddish to get by?
Yiddish, yeah, mostly.
Okay.
Different words she'd pick up in Russian, you know, like papagay became a parrot. A picture of a parrot we had. So I didn't learn much Russian with her.
But was she living with you and your mother? Mhm.
Yeah. She wouldn't go to a home for the aged. And neither would my grandfather, my father's father, also lived with us.
Oh,
And that was rough on my mother.
did they get along?
Not really. They, each one wanted a different name for the children after they were born. One wanted this name named after Chaim, the other one wanted his name to be, so it became Calvin.
So let's talk about the your other grandparents then. Do you your father's parents?
Oh, yeah.
Do you
well,
remember their names?
the only ones I remember was his grandfather made it to this country, and his father.
So your father's father's father.
No, my father.
Your father's father. Okay.
Yeah, made it to this country. Just as my mother's mother made it to this country. And the two didn't get along well.
What was his name? Your father's father.
It's awful. I used to know it.
It's okay. It's not a quiz. But he used to live in the house too. And how long did he live? How old were you when he passed on?
I think he lived longer than my grandmother. I knew I was 13 when my grandmother passed away, but I can't remember when he. Two used to fight like cats and dogs.
Did he ever learn English? Were you able to talk with him?
No, he never. He did steer clear of it. Could have gone to live with my aunt, his father's sister, but she lived in a fancy house in another neighborhood, and apparently, so when it came Passover time for a Seder, I would have the Seder in their house, and their son would come for the Seder. Because my uncle worked for, what's the name of the company? The ice company. They didn't have strictly air conditioning then.
Right, they used to put a block of ice in the window and run a fan over it. Yeah.
Right. But they were like the first in manufacturing air conditioning.
And your uncle's name was, this would be your father's brother.
Who?
The uncle who worked in the ice, that was your father's brother?
No, my father's sister.
Your father's sister.
Yes.
And she was married to a man who
Yes,
dealt in the ice business.
company.
Okay. And what was your father's sister's name?
Goldie.
Goldie, okay.
Yeah. And she was like talk of the family. Goldie had gotten this and had gotten this. She was like the star of the family, you know. She made all these wonderful dishes. And
Did you spend much time in their house in the fancier part of town?
oh,
Did you go to Aunt Goldie's very much to visit?
did she spend a time at
Did
that?
you spend time at her visiting?
Oh yes, I
okay.
would go visit her.
Mm-hmm.
She's like living in a mansion as compared to where we were living.
So why don't you talk about where you were living? Do you remember what part of Baltimore it was?
East Baltimore. A lot of immigrants settled there. And as the immigrants moved out, for one reason or another, there were different nationalities came in. Italians came in, and who else? They had these little push carts they used to wheel around with vegetables.
So this was your grandparents and your parents were both were they observant? Or was there a difference between your grandparents and your parents in the levels
Well,
of
it was
observance?
just my grandmother My mother's mother and my father's father made it to this country. I'm not sure why the others didn't get there.
Did your grandparents? Did your grandfather? Did he put on tefillin? Did he wear a yarmulke?
Yeah.
Okay.
My brothers did also.
Your brothers did also. Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until later that they
They abolished it.
okay. But when they were growing up, they were.
Yeah,
it was an Orthodox
Oh,
household.
yeah, they were.
Okay. And so let's. Are you still good, Sylvia, talking?
Well,
Are you still good to talk? You're not tired out yet? We're good?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just have to clear my throat.
Okay. We could stop any time, but if you can think about any stories about your grandparents, fine. Otherwise, we can start talking about your parents.
Well, they were both had the Michigas, you know. My grandfather had a funny sense of humor. He would follow women down the street with a little cane, and he'd be whistling, and the women would get couldn't understand why he was following them. Just for the fun of it, I'm not sure what his reasoning was behind it.
And so I'm not sure that I heard where your father's father came from. Was he also from Russia? Did he also immigrate from Russia?
And it was, I can see it on the map. I can't remember the name and the area. Mother family came from a town right near Minsk. That's on the western part of the country. My father came from the eastern part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the town. There were people in Israel who had come from that area.
And your father's father, do you know what he did in Russia? We were talking about your mother's father having a tea house. But
Yeah.
what about your father's father? What did he do before he came over?
Oh, my mother's father. Is that what you said?
Right.
He had a wine cellar.
Right. How about your father's father?
Oh, I don't know much about him.
Mhm.
Oh, he dealt with horses.
That's interesting.
He used to buy them or sell them, but I know he was involved with horses.
Mhm.
That much I know. The rest is... And they raised little crops outside their home.
How did your grandparents spend their days when you were growing up? Would they read the Yiddish newspaper, or what would they? How would they? Did they have hobbies? How would they spend their days?
They did read the Yiddish paper, for one thing. And, you know, my grandfather was religious. He attended shul
Mm-hmm.
in the morning and he'd put on his tefillin in the morning. And my brothers did too for a number of years. But like what happened to a lot of immigrant children, divorced themselves.
So let's talk about your mother a little bit. What was her name? And
Her name was, in Russia, it became Lafayette when she got into this country. Okay. This happens to be your right. I don't like tea when it gets cold.
oh, okay. And did she basically was? How many children did she have? How many? You had a big family, didn't you?
Well, there were I thought I had married before, and his wife passed away from the flu when his two children, my stepbrothers, were quite small. And that's when my mother took over. And for her, she's never dealt with little children.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big, deal for her. They used to stand in the window and urinate out the window. It's a big open space. Let's do it. And, but they turned out to be pretty good guys.
And so your mother's name was
Lafatinsky in Russia.
and her first name?
Anna.
Anna. Mm-hmm.
And before, trying to think what.
Can you say a few things about your mother? Like what sorts of things gave her pleasure? What sorts of what would make her happy?
Well, as long as the kids were happy, that made her happy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did she have any hobbies, or she spent most of her time just?
Did she what?
Have any hobbies, or?
She used to cook Russian style. She made all kinds of unusual dishes, and she'd have a Seder every year. And my nephew is my father's sister's son. She felt, or I don't know who decided, that their son, Lester, should come to our house for the Seder. It's all run out.
No, we've got lots of time, but I don't want to. We should probably just have a number of short interviews. We can't get it all in today, but we're doing fine.
Okay.
But we can, anyway, is there more that you would like to say about, let's just finish up talking about your mother right now. How long did she live? Did she live long enough to see you get married?
No. She was quite young. She was 50.
Oh.
She had cancer,
I see.
and they couldn't do anything for her. And I had already left the premises. I had gone to Haksharah for the camp, to acquaint me with the rough life in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when she discovered she had cancer. So I came home and didn't finish my Haksharah period. Later on, he took anybody who wanted to come. Didn't have to have training in a farm.
So before we wind up talking about your mother, are there any stories that you would like any to share? Any funny stories? Some favorite memories?
I know my father did sheet metal work, so he used to make these big stills for bootleggers. And somebody squealed on him. One of the people who had ordered stills, something happened, and he reported it to the policeman, and then then you just didn't make stills, it was outlawed. So he went to jail overnight, and my mother, she thought it was the most horrible thing. He became a criminal.
A jailbird, yeah.
And he was very good at he had a job at one of the army camps close by in Maryland. Camp Halliburton. He would repair autos for them, fenders, and so he was quite talented when it came from metal work. But never made a fortune at it.
He made some of the copper pots that we have upstairs, didn't we? I think we have a couple copper.
I think I gave Miriam.
Yeah, my grandfather was a potter too. He worked
And
in
he
metal.
used to make big pots for Passover. And later on, my brother felt it wasn't good to cook in those pots. Something it wasn't lined with.
Maybe there was lead in the solder or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing these memories with us, Sylvia. And the next time we do this, we'll learn about your father a little bit more, and your brothers, and your childhood. But that'll be for part 2. So thanks a lot for sharing.
Yeah, I've got to rack my memory.